I'm Roy van den Brink-Budgen, and I've been working in the area of critical thinking and related competencies since 1987. I've written many assessments and published many books on the subject, and have taught it to both students and teachers in many countries in the world. This video is a short introduction to the Core Competencies Test that you'll be taking for the second stage of the Future Geniuses Programme selection process. It provides a shorter description of the contents of the test than the test taker's guide, which you are recommended to read. The test that you're going to be doing covers the skills of critical thinking and communication by having 45 multiple choice questions, of which 38 will be on critical thinking and 7 on communication. No specific subject knowledge is required to understand the passages and options used in the questions. These will all be based on real-world material such as scientific, technological, economic and social issues. Since the majority of the questions are on critical thinking, it is important that you understand what skills these questions are assessing. Central to critical thinking is the concept of an argument. By this we mean a case being made for or against something using at least one reason for this. For example, the problem of plastic pollution in the seas and oceans is getting worse. Research into finding marine microorganisms that can digest plastics should be a top priority for marine biologists. You can see that the author is giving the problem of plastic pollution in order to argue for research into finding microorganisms, with this being what we call the conclusion of the argument. So if you're asked to find the conclusion of an argument, you need to look at what the passage is ultimately arguing for, which of course need not be the last thing in the passage. Another category of analysis questions asks you to find what an author takes for granted in an argument. For example, children who watch a lot of TV tend to have high blood pressure, so children should not be allowed to watch a lot of TV. As you can see, the conclusion that children shouldn't be allowed to watch a lot of TV has to assume or take for granted that watching a lot of TV is the cause of the high blood pressure. If the author doesn't assume this, their conclusion can't be drawn. This last example also illustrates another issue. When we evaluate an argument, we look at whether the conclusion can be justified, given the reason or reasons used. You can see that the argument on blood pressure and TV viewing is not strongly justified, given that the evidence can be interpreted in at least one other way. For example, it could be that children with high blood pressure watch a lot of TV, or that there's a third factor that is linked to both blood pressure and TV viewing, and so on. This skill in evaluating the significance of claims, including evidence, is tested in different ways in various questions. For example, you'll be asked to identify how an author uses evidence, how else it could be interpreted, and how given evidence could weaken or strengthen an argument. Your skills in problem solving will also be tested. Questions in this category include identifying the problem that an author presents and what could be relevant to solving a given problem. For example, what data would be relevant to doing this? Another type of question will ask you to select what could be a similar problem to the one that is given. Another category of questions looks at other aspects of argument. One such question asks you to fill in a gap in an argument from given options. What are termed counter-arguments are also included. As the term counter indicates, these are arguments which go against those that are given. In questions on these, you will be asked to identify an existing counter-argument or to identify what would be a counter-argument to a given one. In addition to the 38 questions on critical thinking, there are 7 questions on communication. These will be based on a single passage that covers a particular subject and will include selecting the best summary of the passage, considering what wider theme or issue the passage is relevant to, the purpose of specific references made in the passage, the function of parts of the passage, and the meaning of specific words used in it. In answering the questions, you need to ensure that you read the passage, the task, and the options carefully, in order to ensure that you're clear about what you have to do. That way, you'll be applying your thinking skills in a way that maximises your test score. There is a time bonus that can be applied, such that if you have both a high score and you finish earlier than the time allowed, then your score could be increased.